Are you getting started with your FreeStyle Libre or looking for some practical tips for your FreeStyle Libre sensor? Then keep watching, because in this video I will cover FreeStyle Libre from A to Z, and I'll be sharing some practical tips and hacks that I learned while using FreeStyle Libre for over 3 years. So scan your sensors and let's go! Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tom. I've been type 1 diabetic for over 30 years, and on this channel I help you navigate your diabetes journey. Guys, I'm getting tons of questions from you on various FreeStyle Libre topics, and I have to apologize because I'm not able to respond to all of them. But I decided to make this video where I will talk about FreeStyle Libre from A to Z, and during this video I will respond to the most common questions that I've been getting. This will be a longer video than I normally do, and it will be loaded with value. I'll be talking about the best ways and the best sites to apply your FreeStyle Libre sensor. I will touch on how to keep your sensor on for full 2 weeks, what mistakes to avoid while using the sensor, how to improve Libre accuracy, how to painlessly remove the sensor, and much more. You might want to grab a notepad and take some notes so that you don't forget some of the tips and hacks that I'll be sharing, and you can start applying them in your daily life. Friendly reminder, I'm not a medical professional, and everything I share here is my personal experience and things that worked for me. This is not medical advice. FreeStyle Libre sensor takes your blood glucose readings every 5 minutes and remembers them for exactly 8 hours. To see the current trend and the current number, you need to scan the sensor with your phone or your reader. You should do it every 8 hours so that you can capture all the data from the sensor. To get started, let me quickly show you how I insert and scan my sensor. It's really easy. When you open this yellow box, you will find a sensor pack, sensor applicator, alcohol wipes, and product insert. Take them out and put them all on the table. Next, select the flat side on the back side of your arm, clean it with the alcohol wipe that was in the package, and let it dry. If this is your first time applying, I recommend using the inner back side of the arm and not the outer back side, when the sensor is more likely to get knocked off by a door frame or a seat belt in your car. One pro tip here is always insert the sensor after you washed your side with the soap. You really don't want your skin to be oily. You want the adhesive to stick as well as possible and last for the full 14 days. The oily skin makes it much more challenging for the adhesive to stay on. While the skin is drying, peel the lid of the sensor pack and unscrew the cap from the sensor applicator. Next, you want to place the sensor applicator into the sensor pack. You need to line up the mark that is on the applicator with this dark mark that is on the pack, like this, and press down firmly until it comes to the stop and clicks. Then you lift the applicator from the pack and it's ready for the application. Easy. Here is a little needle that goes in when you apply the sensor, but it doesn't hurt and it comes straight out, so no need to be scared. Now make sure the side you cleaned is completely dry. This again will help the sensor adhesive stick better. So now we push the applicator over the side and press firmly until it goes all the way in. That's it. It didn't hurt at all, very easy. And now make sure the sensor is secured after the application. And last but not least, you need to activate the sensor with your reader, if you have one, or with your phone. To do that, press Scan New Sensor on your reader or your phone and hold the top of your device above the sensor like this. Not like this, like this. When the sensor activates, you will hear a beep or you will feel a vibration if you have your phone on vibrate. Now the sensor needs 60 minutes to adjust to your body, and after these 60 minutes it will provide you blood glucose readings every time you scan for the next 2 weeks. Now, important tip, if you want to use both your phone and your reader, you need to activate the sensor with the reader first. Always first with the reader. If you activate with your phone, the reader will not work anymore. Keep that in mind, it's very important. So which phones are supported with FreeStyle Libre? You need iPhone 7 or higher, or Samsung Galaxy S5 or higher. I will include a full list of supported phones in the description below. And from now on, more scanning and no more finger pricking. I use the FreeStyle Libre Link app on my phone most of the time, and I really love it because it means that I don't have to carry the Libre reader with me all the time. What I used to do when I wanted to check out my blood sugar was I had to open my phone, I had to locate the Libre Link app, open the app, click scan the sensor, and then put the phone next to my sensor to know what my blood sugar is. I know this only takes a few seconds, but if you have to do it multiple times a day, it becomes a bit annoying. And just later this week I realized you don't have to open the FreeStyle Libre Link app at all. If you have an iPhone, you just place your finger on the app icon and a small selection comes up where you click scan sensor. And then you just place your phone next to the sensor and get your reading. It's so much more convenient. If you have an Android phone, you actually don't have to do anything. You just place the unlocked phone on top of the sensor and it will scan right away and show you what the blood sugar is at that moment in time. So that's how you apply and how you scan your sensor. I told you it was easy. Now that you have the sensor on, you want to make sure that you get 100% out of it and you don't make some of the common mistakes that some of the users make. So here are the things that you should avoid. Mistake number 1. You expect every Libre reading to be exactly the same as a glucometer reading, and every time you scan with Libre, you try to verify the number on your glucometer. That is not reasonable because even 2 glucometers usually give you slightly different results. And the rule of thumb is that you can expect your reading to be plus minus 15% off from the actual glucose. So if you check your blood sugar and your glucometer reads 6 millimole, it means that your actual glucose is somewhere between 5.1 and 6.9. So if your actual blood sugar is 6 millimole, your sensor shows 5.1 and your glucometer shows 6.9, both of these values are within the 5% rule of thumb tolerance. If your actual blood glucose is 20, the sensor shows 17 and glucometer shows 23, it's within the 15% tolerance again. These situations are perfectly normal and they don't mean that your sensor is faulty. Now, to make it even more complicated, the Libre readings are taken from the interstitial fluid and not from blood. The interstitial fluid readings are always approximately 10 minutes delayed when compared to readings from blood. So during times when your blood glucose is rising or falling fast, you should expect the difference even more than plus minus 15% because of the time lag between blood glucose and sensor glucose. If your head is spinning from all the numbers and percentages right now, let me turn this theory into a few easy to understand tips. Tip number 1. Don't expect your Libre reading to be exactly the same as your glucometer reading, and do not compare every single reading to the glucometer. They are both slightly off anyway. It makes sense to verify the sensor reading in situations where it shows very high glucose or a hypo, just to make sure you make the right treatment decision, but please don't check the sensor reading every time. And tip number 2, focus on reviewing daily patterns and trends rather than focusing too much on the absolute numbers. You want to maximize your time in range and avoid any huge spikes or drops in your blood sugar. The time in range is really the most important measure here. Before we move to the next mistake, let me know in the comments, do you still use glucometer to verify Libre accuracy? Mistake number 2, you apply your Libre in a wrong spot and your sensor gets ripped out. This is a classic. A lot of users place their sensor repeatedly on the outer side of their arm, and later on they are very surprised that the sensor gets knocked off by a door frame, seatbelt, backpack or something else. Come on, this is common sense. The outer side of the arm is more exposed. What did you expect? I actually stopped using the outer side exactly for that reason lately. I find the back side slightly towards inner side of the arm much safer, and I also started experimenting with alternative sides for sensor placement. I tried thigh and chest. They are so much less exposed than the arm. And I made a video about each of these alternative sides. I will link them here in case you want to check them out. Speaking of the right spots for the sensor, please make sure you rotate the spots frequently. Your skin needs time to recover, and if your skin is damaged and you place the sensor adhesive on a damaged or dry skin, the sensor adhesive is more likely to come off and you lose your sensor. So rotate the spots frequently. Mistake number 3 is insufficient skin preparation before the sensor application. So guys, if your sensor comes off frequently, pay extra attention when preparing the skin before the application. I find the advice of the FreeStyle Libre educators on this topic very good. The FreeStyle Libre educators recommend washing the skin with soap and water, and you don't want to use soap which smells really nice or has any added coloring or hydrating components, because all these can make the skin oily and the sensor adhesive less effective. Use the most basic, non-colored and non-perfumed soap there is. If your skin is hairy, consider shaving it, because the hairs make the adhesive less effective as well. Use the alcohol swab that is in the package and let your skin dry off properly after using it before you apply the sensor. You can use an extra layer of extra adhesive like skin tag on your skin, just like Michelle is showing in her video here, to make the sensor adhesive stick better. After the application, you can use an extra overpatch like Sim patch, but if you do so, make sure you don't cover this little spot in the middle of the sensor. This one should not be covered, and the manufacturer says that this little spot here is used to balance the humidity and the temperature around the sensor. So it's very important to keep this middle spot in the middle of the sensor not covered. Mistake number 4 is scanning too much or not scanning enough. But how many times a day should you scan? The FreeStyle Libre educators usually recommend around 10 times a day as a minimum. I think that balance is important when it comes to everything. So try to scan enough but not too much. Scanning 3 times a day, you're probably not taking a full advantage of the sensor. Scanning hundreds times a day, hey, you might be putting yourself under a lot of pressure and just doing it too much, which leads to stress and then higher blood sugar just as a consequence of the stress. So try to find the balance that works best for you and try to stay within the 10 times a day ballpark recommended by the FreeStyle Libre educators. Guys, if you're getting value out of this video so far, hit that like button, and now we're gonna talk about another very important topic, and that's removing the sensor. Because the manufacturer doesn't give you a lot of guidance here and doesn't give you a lot of information on how best to do it. So if you don't follow the tips I'm about to give you now, it might be a bit uncomfortable and a bit painful. In the next sequence, I'm gonna break out the removal process in 5 easy steps that will make it absolutely seamless for you and you will feel no pain. Step 1. Take a piece of cotton and soak it in baby oil or coconut oil. Then rub it around the plastic part of the sensor. The oil will melt the adhesive and it will be much easier and much less painful to remove. You can let the oil run underneath the disc to soak the adhesive even more. Let it soak for 5 to 10 minutes. This will really make a difference, trust me. By the way, I use coconut oil today, but you can also use baby oil or products like Unisolve or Takeaway from Amazon. I will add some links in the description below for you if you want to get fancy. If you're a guy and don't know where to get these cotton swabs from, you can just steal it from your wife or girlfriend. I guarantee they have it. Step 2. Peel the edge of the adhesive and try to peel it away slowly in one motion. The slower you do it, the less painful it will be, so try to go really slowly, not too rapidly, and really gently. You see, when the sensor starts to come off, it's not 100% smooth, but it's a way easier since everything is soaked in oil and it really doesn't stick that well anymore. Sometimes when the sensor is stuck really well, it's easier to remove the disc from the adhesive. While the adhesive is still on the skin, you can remove the disc and then soak the rest of the adhesive with oil, which will make it come out really smoothly. This should also help in case you're struggling big time. Step 3. Discard the used sensor according to local regulation for disposal of batteries, electronic materials, sharps, and materials potentially exposed to body fluids. Step 4. Clean any remaining adhesive on your arm with warm soapy water or body wash and alcohol, which helps disinfect the wound. You can use the second alcohol swab that is included in your Libre package, if you were wondering what it is there for when you open it. Alcohol is more aggressive, so what works best for me is using soapy water, warm, nice, really gentle, doesn't irritate the skin at all. That's what I like the most. Clean the adhesive really well. You don't want to end up like Theresa May, who is the ex-British Prime Minister, who was walking in public with a black circle on her arm. You don't want to have that, and since the adhesive is really sticky, if you leave some leftovers on your arm, there will be a black circle for the next few days. Nice and clean, no? Once your skin is nice and clean, you can dry it. And finally, step 5, insert and activate the new sensor. You don't need to do anything to disconnect the old sensor from the reader. You just scan the new one and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. Alright, so now you know how to insert the sensor, how to remove it, and what mistakes to avoid. Another question that you ask me a lot is how to improve the sensor accuracy. Well, this is a bit challenging and I cannot make wonders, but I can share a few tips here. Let's go. My most favorite tip number 4 is to avoid certain beauty products, medication and temperature changes. Abbott specifically says that products which include these two things, I have no idea how to pronounce them, but I know that they are included in certain skincare products, might negatively impact accuracy of readings. A number of FreeStyle Libre users also reported inaccurate readings after taking medication like ibuprofen or paracetamol. Some users even argue that vitamin C might negatively impact accuracy of sensor readings. As you know, and as I always remind you, I'm not a doctor, so please take these experiences from other Libre users with a grain of salt as something to consider, but not as a strict scientific fact. Now, if you go to sauna or take cold showers, you might have noticed that these rapid temperature changes have negative impact on the sensor readings. Usually when the sensor is exposed to very high temperature, like in sauna, it will give you higher readings, and when it's in a very low temperature, in a cold shower or when you swim in a cold water, it might give you slightly lower readings. So consider not making any treatment decisions based on the sensor readings right after getting out of that sauna or right after getting out of that cold shower. My most favorite tip number 3 is stay hydrated. We are all recommended to drink at least 2 liters of water every day. And since the sensor takes readings from interstitial fluid, if you don't drink enough, there is just not enough interstitial fluid to take the reading from. Makes sense, right? So stay hydrated. My most favorite tip number 2 is sensor calibration. And guys, this is not something that the manufacturer tells you to do, and I don't advise you to that either, unless you know exactly what you are doing. So how does the calibration work? Well, basically you tell a third-party app on your phone what your blood glucose from a glucometer is at a certain point in time. And the app compares the data from glucometer to the data coming from the sensor. And if these two numbers are different, the app will calibrate any future readings from the sensor to closer match the blood sugar readings from the glucometer. To calibrate your FreeStyle Libre sensor, you need a third-party transmitter for your Libre, such as Meow Meow 2, and a third-party app on your phone. The most common apps that users use are Xtrip Plus, Tomato, or Glimp. And I will include the links of both the third-party transmitter and the third-party apps that I just mentioned in the video description for you to check. And now let's get to my number 1 favorite tip for FreeStyle Libre accuracy. You see, sometimes we all follow all the manufacturer instructions and recommendations. Sometimes you might even follow all the tips that I just gave you, but your sensor might still give you inaccurate readings. And the reason might be quite simple. Just because the sensor is faulty. You know, sometimes it happens, sensor is faulty, and all these instructions, all these tips will not work anyway. And if that's the case, you are definitely entitled to get a free replacement from Abbott, the manufacturer of FreeStyle Libre. So guys, these were the 4 tips how to improve the FreeStyle Libre sensor accuracy. One of them that I mentioned was the sensor calibration. And I'm currently working on another video where I will talk about calibration and how to do it in detail, so stay tuned for that one. And now let's talk about the most controversial topic when it comes to FreeStyle Libre. If you guys watched some of my videos where I put my sensor in the chest or in the thigh, you might have seen that some of the people asked me and challenged me asking, is this actually allowed? Well, as I always tell you, the only approved side by the manufacturer is the upper arm. If you place your sensor anywhere else, you're simply not following the manufacturer instructions, which is not something that I can advise you to do. On this channel, I don't provide medical advice anyway. What I can do though is I can tell you my opinion. And my opinion is that any kind of product instructions are great. Sometimes there are situations though when it's possible to not follow instructions at the same time not doing any damage to anyone and personally benefiting from it. And if using an alternative site for your sensor placement falls within this bucket for you, then it's totally fine for you to decide which site is the best for you and which site you will be using. In the next sequence, I'm going to tell you what my 4 favorite sites are and why. My number 4 favorite spot is hips. And the main reason why I and some of my viewers like this area is because it's very discreet. You can cover it with your clothes and nobody will see that you have the sensor placed there, and nobody will notice when you're actually scanning. Most of the time this area is covered, so you can really keep your sensor private, taking readings without anyone noticing. It is also very easy to apply the sensor there, and it's quite durable because this area is well protected from all the door frames, which is number 1 enemy of all FreeStyle Libre users. What I don't like about this spot is that this area tends to be a little bit less accurate, and that's not only based on my personal results but based on a study that was done on a large number of users. And I will link the study in the description below so you can check it out. Another thing that very active people don't like about this area is that when they exercise their core, the sensor is in the way as they stretch their belly and hips during sit-ups and similar exercises. If you don't know what sit-ups are, then you should be fine. Moving on to my favorite spot number 3, and that is, surprise surprise, upper arm. Yes, this spot recommended by Abbott is really not that bad. It's very accurate and it's quite comfortable. You can also rely on Abbott to replace any faulty sensor that you placed in your upper arm in case the sensor was giving you faulty readings or if it fell off too early. And by the way, it is unlikely that Abbott would give you a free replacement in case you tell them that you placed your sensor somewhere else than the recommended site. What I and probably almost every user of FreeStyle Libre sensors hate about the upper arm is that it's so exposed to door frames and other objects, and it's so easy to knock off your sensor if you have it in your upper arm. Also, application to the upper arm is quite difficult because you kind of need to hug yourself and you don't really see where exactly you are placing the sensor. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this location because most of you probably already know it, and I moved to number 2 favorite spot of mine, and this is thigh. Why? Because thigh is so much more protected and the sensors I place there tend to last much longer. They typically show very accurate numbers, and not only to me. The clinical study showed that thigh is much more accurate than abdomen and almost as accurate as upper arm. For me, it's also very durable, discreet, and easy to cover even in summer with shorts or swimsuit. There is such a high variability of spots on thigh because they are simply much bigger than arms, so you can rotate the spots, not constantly overusing and damaging a very small skin area like I do with the arms. To whom I would not recommend the thigh? Probably to runners, bikers, and other sports people who use their legs a lot for different kinds of exercises, because if the thigh is under a huge pressure of the exercise, it might not be great to have a sensor there. Also, if you guys have hairy legs like me, it might be a bit difficult to place your sensor there unless you shave it, so this is another thing that you might want to consider. For me, the best and my number 1 most favorite area that I tried is chest. This side is very flat, so my sensors stick there very well and I do not bump into anything. It is the most durable spot I found on my body so far, and it gives me pretty reliable and accurate readings. For me, it's also a very comfortable and discreet option. I know many users are terrified by the idea of placing the sensor in the chest because it somehow doesn't feel right. But on the other hand, unlike all other sites, I have never heard anyone who actually tried this site complain about chest. Everyone who has tried chest has been happy with this area. So maybe it's time for you to give the chest a shot. Not a medical advice. Guys, I'm curious which tip I'm sharing today you like the most. Let me know in the comments below. I have a whole playlist with more FreeStyle Libre tips and hacks. If you wanna watch it, click on the top video on the screen now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next Type 1 Talks video. Ciao!